All right. So a couple of things before we get started in earnest. So as we all know, these are uncomfortable conversations with LVC minority students. And I want to thank you all so much for one, participating in this conversation, but two, just showing me interest and showing that you're willing to take your understanding to a further level. And so that whole idea of taking your understanding to a further level has directly to do with all of us, but a lot with myself. Yes, I'm facilitating this conversation. However, I'm just as equally a part of the conversation as you all are in this session. So it's not like me, I had the keys to the kingdom type thing. I'm here to learn with everyone else. None of us are on a pedestal. Yes, some of us have a little bit more knowledge about a situation, but we all can grow, we all can learn. And so I asked all of us to, as I said in my email a little bit earlier today, if we can come with open minds, open hearts, and just open opinions, I think that'll benefit this meeting and all of the sessions that we have and all of the conversations that we have, not only on this campus, but just in our lives to go so much smoother. Another thing I like to say in a lot of the sessions that I do, whether it be in symposium or BSU, anything like that, is when we're having discussions such as these, it is amazing if we all can go into the conversation understanding two things. One, kind of like the element and the whole idea of this session is that we are here to be slightly uncomfortable. And the thing is that we never learn anything unless we're uncomfortable. So in order to come to a place of comfortability, we have to be uncomfortable. I know that was a lot of syllables and a lot of things just shoved into one sentence, but I hope all of us kind of get it and got it, that to learn, to expound upon our knowledge and our growth as human beings, we have to be uncomfortable. And in those moments, that is when we truly learn. Secondly, when we're having conversations such as these, it is extremely important, imperative that we not listen to respond, but we listen to understand. And I say that a lot in a lot of these sessions I do. Because when you listen to respond, you kind of already blotted out what that person is saying to you. You're already formulating your response. You're already thinking about like, oh, like I don't agree with that, or you're thinking about what you're going to say to that person. But if you listen to understand where that person is coming from, and note that when you listen to understand, it's not saying that you agree. You're just simply listening to try to see where is that person coming from. And when we do that, we're able to move the both of us or all of us to a better understanding. So I encourage all of us to, one, be uncomfortable, allow yourself to grow, allow yourself to be part of the sensory world. So many times in this world, we don't truly unplug. We don't be in one space. And so I ask us to just be in this space for a hot moment of today, but also just listen to understand rather than listen to respond. Another thing, I put my number in the chat. Can we all see that? Can we flip over to the chat and is it there? Did I do something wrong?
It was there.
It's there. Great. So the reason why I did that is I love all of y'all, but not for y'all to have my personal information, but for multiple things. One,
well, I don't see it. I'm sorry, Khalil.
I don't see it.
I don't see it either.
You don't see it either? Okay. Let me do it again. I think I might have just did it when Adrian joined. So give me everyone, let's see. Everyone. Okay. Did we get that one?
Yeah.
It was difficult. I remember my number. Okay, we all see that? Okay. So
Yes.
as I was saying, it's not so that you all can have my personal contact information, but it's simply so, yes, these are uncomfortable conversations. So it's three things. One, if we're speaking in this conversation, I want all of us to understand that we're going to be saying things that, we might have different opinions, might have different perspectives, might have different outlooks on the world. And that can be uncomfortable. So if it's ever a time during this conversation where someone else says something that you're like, wow, that's a little, that makes me feel a little uncomfortable. I'm a little uncomfortable, I ask you to do one of three things. One, push through it and maybe say like, okay, I'm uncomfortable because I hadn't faced this topic. I hadn't faced that perspective. And we're joined by Raven. Can
Hello.
you hear it?
Yes.
Okay, so real quick, can you put your preferred name and your pronouns on your screen so that we can address you appropriately? All right, cool. So one of three things. One, if someone says something that makes you feel a little uncomfortable, I ask you to say, okay, maybe just because I hadn't faced a perspective and like that's making me feel this type of way. So push through it because you might be able to learn something. Two, if it's a situation like, okay, ouch, that offended me, that rubbed me the wrong way, that was offensive, that was racist, that was discriminatory in any type of way, obviously I do not want you to endure that. So I put my number in the chat if you want to text me and say, hey, can you address that? If you do not feel comfortable in addressing it yourself. I would say one, I think is a marvelous if you address it yourself because we can hear it directly from you. But if you do not feel comfortable, please, please, please text me and let me know so that I can address it. The third thing that you can do is if it's a situation where you just do not want to be in that conversation in this space, let me know and feel free to just exit the call and we'll continue to move forward. And at the conclusion of this, I will definitely make sure I reach out to check in to see what went left. Okay. Raven, just to reiterate, my number is in the chat just in case if anything goes astray. If you have something that you want to say or we feel a little uncomfortable, you have my number to reach out to me so that I can be aware. Okay. Those are all of my like announcement type, rule type, logistical things. Are there any questions with anything I said? Are we crystal clear? All right, let's dig into it. Let's get into it for real. All right, so just to make sure, and I should have did this at the top of the meeting, but we are all in the conversation of Black Lives Matter versus Blank Lives Matter, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Yes.
Great. And so some of you who might have seen, or all of you might have seen that previously we were under the title of Black Lives Matter versus Blue Lives Matter. But I had many conversations with a lot of students, and one of the students are actually in this call today that was like, pushed it, that challenged me. And so I'm gonna ask you all to challenge each other in the same way that Raven challenged me, but said, let's not only talk about Blue Lives Matter, let's talk about All Lives Matter. Let's talk about Asian Lives Matter. Let's talk about any hashtag/social movement that has attached Lives Matter to the end of it. And so I thought that was really amazing and really something that we can just unpack in this conversation. So I want us to not only think about the dynamic, the social movement, and the relevancy of Black Lives Matter versus Blue Lives Matter, but what does it mean when it comes to All Lives Matter, or the movement right now when it's violence against Asian Americans, and Asian Americans are beginning to use the hashtag of All Asian Lives Matter. So I think to get us started, I want us to do two things. One, let us know what drew you to this conversation. So let us know, one, your name, just introduce yourself to all of us and say just something that you want us to know about you for the sake of this conversation. And then two, let us know what drew you to this particular topic. So I'ma just, instead of popcorning it, which I usually do for the sake of time, I'm gonna just kick it to someone and I'm gonna just try to keep us moving. So Olivia, can we go with you first?
Sure. I'm Olivia. I'm a senior creative writing major. So I'm in Kathy's class with Khalil, and we've been having some weekly shares. And this is a topic that has been brought up a lot about police brutality and articles about that. And of course, like the trending hashtags on Twitter about like Asian Lives Matter and stuff, of which I am a part of, or of which that group I am a part of. So this is really interesting to me, and I have very strong opinions about these kinds of topics. And Khalil was kind enough to reach out and say, would you be willing to speak out on this topic? And here I am.
Thank you so much. And I would take, because I know you're not, and so when I was gathering together everyone that was going to be in these conversations, I know that Olivia, you're quiet, But what I was saying is that Olivia is the type of person that when you call on her, she has 1,001 things to say. So I hope that we can get those strong opinions in this conversation. Don't feel free. Do not curve your tongue, anything, let it out, because I have a good sense in my body of like what people are trying to say. So if you don't pull it out, I'm gonna pull it out of you, okay?
All right. Thank you, Khalil.
Okay, no problem. Adrian, can we go with you?
Sure. I'm Adrienne Hawker. I'm an auditing senior citizen, and I have been auditing classes since 2016. And I met Khalil 2 years ago, I believe, when we had a class together, and got to know him and the Black Student Union. And I was honored that they allowed a senior citizen to be a part of their group. So I had actually signed up for 2 of the other topics that had been scheduled, and those had to be eliminated due to time constraints. So this was one that I felt I had some opinions on and would like to learn more about. And one reason I wanted this particular group was because of Professor Schroeder. And he's probably surprised to know that that was one of my choices, but I know that, Professor, you've been involved with the various movements on campus, particularly over this past year, but you're also very active in Annville, and some of the issues that I perceive are directly related to what I have, again, my perception of the climate in Annville. So maybe we can talk about some of those things, particularly regarding Confederate flags and Blue Lives Matter.
I think it makes perfect sense to swing it to Professor Schroeder at this point. Why are
Thank
you
you.
here, Professor? And what you got for us?
Thank you, Khalil, and it's nice to hear you, Adrian. I didn't recognize you until I heard you speak, and then immediately your vision came to my mind, and it's nice to interact with you again. So my name is Michael Schroeder. I teach history here at LVC, and for the past almost a year now, I've been the principal organizer of the Black Lives Matter protest actions in the Annville Town Square. This Saturday actually is our 100th protest action. We're going to try to get 100 people out. Katie has come out numerous times. Kathy has as well. And you're all cordially invited to come on out. We've encountered a lot of responses in the street, and Katie can attest to this, and shouts back that all lives matter, white lives matter, blue lives matter. There was a it wasn't Blue Lives Matter, but it was Back the Blue, sort of counter protest that was organized right before the elections in November. It was like in October. They did like 3 or 4 Thursdays in a row. But in any case, this is something that I have an abiding interest in. I teach about race, talk about race and issues of slavery and race and racial formation and so on. And this, to me, reaches to the core contradiction of our republic that we need to address in some fundamental ways as a historian, right? So that's like a brief thumbnail sketch of why I'm here. And I was actually invited to this session by Khalil, and I was happy to join in. So I'm happy to be here, and that's about it.
Thank you so much, Professor. Let's swing it in a different direction. Let's do Abby.
Hi guys, I'm Abby. I'm a freshman clinical mental health counseling major. And I think I was kind of just always interested in this subject, but I would say my interest definitely sparked a little bit over the summer with all the police brutality cases that came to light. And from there, I was doing research and watching different documentaries, and just kind of trying to gain more information about the topic as a whole. And then when Khalil reached out and gave this as one of the options, I was super excited to be a part of it.
Great. Kathy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kathy Romagnolo. I teach in the English department and am the director of the social justice program. And I really am interested in all of the topics that Khalil has raised. This one in particular, I think, really captures my interest. I taught a seminar on Black Lives Matter. Gosh, I think it's maybe 3 or 4 years ago now. It's got to be 4 years ago. Gosh, time flies. And, you know, I always feel like this, but I learn as much from my students as, you know, as I think I teach, maybe more. And so I'm here to learn from you all and to hear your voices and your perspectives.
Thank you so much. Let's go, Julia.
Hi, I'm Julia. I'm a sophomore social justice and English double major. And I'm, first of all, really excited to hear what everyone has to say. I have a tendency to talk a lot, but I'm really excited to listen.
Every word is worth it.
And I mean, I was super honored to be invited to participate in any of these topics, but being at a lot of the protests last semester, this semester I have class at that time, but and hearing just how angry the statement Black Lives Matter, which should be a pretty non-controversial opinion, and how it compelled so many people to roll down their window and scream, and felt so antagonized by just that statement to find their own way to piggyback off of that or contradict in some way or take really take nothing away from the statement Black Lives Matter and what it means. And it makes me incredibly angry, and I also just have a really difficult time understanding how, like, where that anger comes from. And so I just think it's something really interesting and important to address, especially in our area where we've seen in the community that it's certainly an issue.
Definitely, definitely. Let's do Raven.
Hi, I'm Raven. I'm a freshman business admin major. What was I supposed to be saying?
I got you. I was with you. Just what drew you to this topic? Why do you feel like you deserve a seat at this particular topic? What about it drew you?
What drew me and what caused me to suggest that we brought in the topic, it was really Professor Romagnolo. It was her teaching throughout this past year that she's really opened my eyes to a lot. A lot of my opinions about things have changed. I've learned a lot, and I want to show, and I kind of just want to show everybody what I've learned, because this topic, the topic of Black Lives Matter, has been important to me and my family for a very long time. And so I just want to share that with everyone.
Mm-hmm. And I believe this is last not least, but Katie.
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm a sophomore exercise science major here. I've always been pretty passionate about human rights in general. So I think that's kind of what drew me in. I've attended a lot of Professor Schroeder's Black Lives Matter protests. And I think it's super important to talk about in general, and especially with everything going on right now. I think broadening the topic to like any other like fill in the blank for Lives Matter was a really great idea. And I think it's really important to talk about all aspects of that. But yeah, I'm just happy to be here and talk about all these important stuff with everybody.
Thank you so much. I didn't miss anyone, did I? Is my memory failing me?
You missed
No.
yourself, Khalil. What drew you to this conversation?
What drew me? Similar to what a lot of people said, I think that is incredibly important, and I don't want my verdict on the importance level of the Black Lives Matter to sway anyone, because that is going to be my next question. But just with everything that's been going on, I feel as though a lot of people do not understand how long of a fight Black Lives Matter has been. A lot of people, and I addressed this in BSU, my Black Student Union meetings, is that a lot of people believe that Black Lives Matter started with George Floyd. And a lot of people think that it started and ends with George Floyd. But that's not the case at all. You know, this type of issue has been going on for centuries in our country and for millennia in just the world of, you know, not appreciating the Black existence. And so especially when it comes to what's going on right now in the world, we have to understand that this is the fight that must continue. And as we saw horribly in this 1 week, all of the issues that have been raised of Dante Wright and Adam Toledo and individuals like that, it shows how pressing of a matter this is. You know, like the George Floyd family was in constant contact and in communication with the family of Emmett Till, who I don't know if everyone knows, but Emmett Till was killed in the 50s by just white supremacists. So this type of stuff has been going on for a very, very long time. And so for me, I wanted to raise the point that this is not something that's temporary. This is not something that's a hashtag. It's not simply that you print it out on a mask or a t-shirt. This is a lifestyle for Black people that we must continue to fight for. So thank you, Professor, for asking me that question and drawing me into the ring. My question, and I want to start because I sense it in my bones that Raven have a lot to talk about. So I want to start with Raven, but then I just wanted to open up to anyone who wanted to crack at it. But do we think Black Lives Matter is important? I want to start there, and then we can expand out into the other notions of All Lives Matter, Asian Lives Matter, and Blue Lives Matter, and what do those individually mean? But just starting out, let's get a base of, do we think it's important? Do we think Black Lives Matter is important? And if so, why? So Raven, can we start with you? And
Yes.
anyone else that wants to jump in, just please jump in.
Of course it's important. I think that first of all, I feel like that shouldn't even be a question. that is first. I want to get that established. It shouldn't even be a question. And it makes me very upset that we have to ask questions like these. Like of course all lives matter. That's the point. But what Black Lives Matter says is not just us. We're saying that we're here and we exist and we want to be treated like we exist.
Thank you. Did anybody want to tack onto what Raven said?
I'll tack onto that. In my humble opinion, in my view, and anyone who would want to correct me if I'm wrong, the whole concept with Black Lives Matter goes back to the killing of Black men, in particular, men and boys, by police. All lives matter, of course, that goes without saying. But as far as I'm aware, the only group whose lives have been taken in massive numbers by police are Black people. That's why there's a huge need for the awareness that Black lives matter. If they ran statistics on how many white men were ever killed by police, how many from any other racial or ethnic group were routinely killed by police, and the fact that once these murders happen, there is no action taken against the police. Okay, somebody might be forced to retire. Well, that's real tough to retire from the police force when you're 50 some years old with a pension that is roughly 3/4 of your, your routine salary. Boy, that's really punishment. So, and I think that that's just what I sense that people don't understand, that the whole issue behind Black Lives Matter is Black men's lives have been for centuries taken by police.
Mhm. Definitely, definitely. And I want to tease out something that Raven said about how it makes her upset that we're even addressing the situation, that this is even a question. Is it important? So one other question I want to throw out there for us to tap into is, why do we think it's disputed? I think both Julia and Katie kind of tapped into this, but why is it disputed? Why do we think that people have such an issue with Black Lives Matter?
I think a lot of people are taking it as only Black Lives Matter or Black Lives Matter more than other lives. But obviously that is not the case. It's not saying that. It's, as Raven was saying, Black lives exist and their dreams matter and their hopes matter, and they are allowed to exist as human beings. And that shouldn't be, they shouldn't have threats to their lives every day.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple of things to say. The first thing that I want to say is that while I agree with Abby that I think some people just simply don't understand or misunderstand the phrase Black Lives Matter to mean, more. And often I've heard students say, if we could just add "to" the end, Black Lives Matter 2. And, I think, first of all, in relation to my first comment, I think that sometimes that misunderstanding is disingenuous, that it is a form of veiled racism, and that the people who say it know very well what they are doing, know very well that they are undermining this movement and that it's intentional. And then when they're called out on it, they say, oh, I didn't understand that, or they act, ignorant.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing I would say, and this is kind of a question, Raven, you'll remember this question from our class, but the students, in response to the students, some of them saying, well, maybe we should change the phrase to Black Lives Matter 2. And my question was, should we be changing the language of this movement, which means so much, in order to make, I'm just going to put it out there, white people feel more comfortable?
Definitely. And as like I'm trying to phrase it, like in the joint to your question, something that popped up into my head is, do we think is Black Lives Matter a threat? Is it threatening? Is that a threatening statement? And if so, who is it threatening to? So in addition to Kathy's question of, are we adding 2 at the end of the Black Lives Matter 2 to make white people feel more comfortable? But then also, when we say Black Lives Matter, do some people take that as a threat when people say Black Lives Matter? And then who take that as, who is threatened by that statement?
I think so. I would say that in truth, it's not, but I think that a lot of people, are white people specifically, have become so comfortable being in the position of privilege and of everything being the conversation in general culture being catered to and surrounded or centered around them that they're made it's uncomfortable when the conversation is about someone else. And so I think that people don't know what to do with that discomfort, and are reluctant to be in a position where they are not the center of attention. And so they turn to anger as a response to discomfort. And I think that while Black Lives Matter should not be a threatening statement to anyone, it shows the mindset of people who feel like they need to respond with, well, it should be that they also matter, but I matter too, or Blue Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, that in the minds of somebody who says that, the existence and well-being of Black people seems antagonizing to their own position. And I think that that's very telling.
A lot of G's in there. Go ahead,
Can I
Professor.
sort of build on that?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I think what people are saying is powerful. I would actually, though, go further than discomfort and say, I mean, when I see people shout "All Lives Matter" or "Blue Lives Matter" in the town square, what I see is white supremacy dying hard, right? That white supremacy has been around for centuries. It dies really hard. It had less, in my interpretation, has less to do with discomfort than it does to do with power. That this is about power relationships and white people exercising greater power and greater privilege, and they hate giving that up. I mean, if history teaches anything, it's that the powerful are reluctant to relinquish their power. And so I see this as white supremacy dying hard, and an ugly death. I would also go back to something, Kathy, you say the time flies. I'll think back to even before Black Lives Matter, when Dr. Romagnolo gave her the commencement address maybe 7 or 8 or 9 years ago. I don't remember when it was, but the words continue ringing in my ear: put an alternative discourse into circulation. And that's exactly what Black Lives Matter does. It puts an alternative discourse, an alternative narrative into circulation, because historically Black lives have mattered less than white lives. It's just a raw fact. Black bodies have been expendable. Black lives have been more expendable. And so this is sort of contrary to the long sweep of American history. And white supremacy just dies really hard and ugly. And that's kind of what we're confronted with so I don't see it as people being being uncomfortable. And I don't see it as them misunderstanding. I think people understand perfectly well. When they give us the finger and when they shout back, they're saying, screw you. We're not going to accept that Black people are equal. And that just needs to die. And there's no other way than to just confront it head on and insist that it be eradicated.
And I just to piggyback right off of that, I think that we can shift that mindset to the other topics that we're here discussing today. It's really important to, oh my goodness, come back to me. It just left.
Absolutely, and I think I was picking up on your thread. Before I shift slightly to alter our focus just a bit, does anyone else have anything to say in this pool of what we've been talking about?
Yeah, I do. So to sort of go back a couple topics, obviously I think Black lives are super important. I think um, I don't see why that should be a question. I don't see why this is such a controversial statement, but I think the fact that people are so angry about the simple phrase Black Lives Matter is what makes it important, because why should people get so angry over Black people trying to live their lives and not be afraid of dying every day? And I think part of it is also racism is obviously something that is taught. You're not born racist. And I think a lot of the anger that comes towards the movement is Julia and Dr. Schroeder were saying that that they're mad about this because this is sort of like their worldview being challenged because obviously not everyone's racist, but like, you know, historically people have viewed Black people as lesser, and so those values get taught onto generations, and so people see this movement and say and like think, oh, I'm being threatened because my worldview is wrong, but they don't want to admit that their worldview is racist and wrong, so they lash out in anger about it. And I think that's part of what fuels it. And of course, like white supremacy, believing and thinking, oh, we've had this power all this time, I don't want to get that taken away from. But I also think it's that people are just simply don't want to have their worldview challenged, and they don't want to admit that they're wrong.
Right. Absolutely.
And I just add, I totally agree with everything that Olivia said, and I agree with a lot of what everybody said. When you're like at these protests, like these people are mad. Like we don't engage them. Like we're just standing there holding signs, and they drive by and they're just screaming at us. And no matter how calmly you try to approach them, they don't hear what you have to say. They're not listening. The other week there was a guy pumping gas and he yelled to us, "All lives matter." And I'm like, all right, like, then why aren't you mad too? Like, you're right, then why aren't you mad? And he said, "I'm not mad." And I'm like, right, but why? If all lives matter, then you should be mad when people are murdered in the streets for no reason.
Let's tap into that. It seems, and I'm kind of getting this vibe that what is wrong with the hashtag All Lives Matter? What does that insinuate? And I want to focus like specifically on All Lives Matter, but I will touch upon Blue Lives Matter. But what does All Lives Matter kind of insinuate to people when you say, okay, let's no, let's not say Black Lives Matter. Let's say All Lives Matter. But understanding that if we say All Lives Matter, I'm just saying it because Black Lives Matter should just be folded into All Lives Matter. So what do we see as the issue with shifting the tag or mushing the tag of Black Lives Matter into All Lives Matter? What do we think that does to the movement?
I answered that exact question in class with Professor Romagnolo. And basically the problem with it is that it takes power away from the movement. The entire point of the movement is to it carries an implicit to. However, we don't say that because saying Black Lives Matter too is basically saying all lives matter. We're not saying that all lives don't matter. It's just that history in the world that we live in today is telling us that this group of people does not matter.
And before anyone jump in, I'm pretty sure it was you, Raven, that brought this up. But I wanted to tap into that. I'm like, when we talk about All Lives Matter, we say the hashtag All Lives Matter. Like, is that true? Is it true? Like when people say, "Oh, let's not say Black Lives Matter, let's just say All Lives Matter," but is that a true statement? Do all lives matter? So I want to throw it out there too, but not forgetting the first question of what does saying All Lives Matter do to the movement? What does that imply? But then also, do all lives matter? Is that a true statement?
Julia, you can take it. You look like you've been waiting.
The second question is, which the point is that this is a difficult and relatively uncomfortable conversation. I don't know that I have an answer to the second question at this point. But I would say that to me, when people say all lives matter, it is a very intentional refusal to take any sort of stand. It is a way to shut down any possibility of the status quo being challenged, and taking the statement Black Lives Matter, which, as we said, shouldn't be controversial, yet here we are, and try to shift it to something that is palatable to them, that placates them and makes them feel as if nothing specific needs to be done. And so I see it as like a very pointed suppression of any possibility for change.
Yeah, coming back off of that, I totally agree that it's often used to like minoritize, like make the statement Black Lives Matter seem lesser. The problem with it is that it has been used in direct retaliation to Black Lives Matter instead of like, yeah, you're right, Black Lives Matter. I think everyone's lives matter. Instead, it has been used to specifically retaliate against Black Lives Matter, similarly to how Blue Lives Matter has been used in that way. Nobody was saying Blue Lives Matter until they got upset about Black Lives Matter. It has been used in direct retaliation. And I agree that they use it as a point to stay more neutral or sound neutral when they're not really. But like, this isn't really a neutral topic because staying neutral isn't gonna make things change. It's not going to get anybody justice.
Right. If I was not like to clarify, it's almost like a fake neutrality that implies that they want to keep things as they are, and as they are is white supremacy and a culture of that and police brutality. So it's sort of like a front.
I would love it if the world could be gray. However, these topics are very black and white. And the sad truth with black and white topics is that you have I'm sorry, to be on the side, to be neutral is to be on the side of the opposition. It is unfortunately to be against the justice that is being fought for.
Kind of like the notion of bystanders or as equally guilty type thing.
Yeah, to me, it's a form of denialism, and a denialism of racism in particular. That it's basically saying racism doesn't exist, and I'm not a racist. I have black friends. I know black people. You know, I have a cousin who's married to a black person, and we have Thanksgiving dinner together. I'm not racist, and so it feeds into this kind of denialism that race has kind of anything to do with anything. The other thing I see, so it's kind of a counter narrative. The other aspect of the counter narrative is that Black Lives Matter as an organization is corrupt, right? That these people are lining their pockets, that they are self-professed trained Marxists that are living in mansions. And so there's this whole sort of right-wing set of talking points about Black Lives Matter, the heads of the organization being corrupt, lining their pockets. And then the other aspect that delegitimizes it is that it's about nothing but looting and burning and destroying property. And if you back Black Lives Matter, then you are in favor of destruction and mayhem and chaos and riots, and that it's fundamentally anti-American. So,
do anyone have anything to say before I take out a piece of what Professor Schroeder just said?
I just wanted to add one thing to what Professor Schroeder said. And I'm probably just reiterating it in a different form, but the phrase all lives matter, in addition to everything that everyone has been saying, it also is a direct denial of the experience of Black folks in the United States. It attempts to empty that out of all meaning and say, no, your experience isn't what you say your experience is. And therefore the term Black Lives Matter is not necessary.
Just really quickly, that is how they think. I know I haven't spoken to people who support All Lives Matter. However, I haven't had a conversation with this person about it, but I do know that they support All Lives Matter and they don't support Black Lives Matter. And she basically feels that Black Lives Matter is like a terrorist group, and she also feels as though Black people are not oppressed. That is, and when I heard that one, I was really shocked because all my life I've seen the oppression, I felt it, I've lived through it. And to hear someone say that's not what has happened, it was just very jarring. That's
yeah. And when you say, so I wanted to try to be as direct as possible. So when you say that's what they think or that's what they believe, who is the they in that sentence?
I'm referring to people who support not just support All Lives Matter, but anyone who is in opposition to. No, I shouldn't say that either. I would say it's mostly All Lives Matter supporters.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually when I'm doing my research and I see the argument from the other side. That's what I see. I see that a lot.
Mm-hmm. And so I want to throw this in there that Professor Schroeder and Raven, you kind of touched on a little bit too, is this is not directly related to these topics, but I think is hingent upon it. And so we get into this idea of Black Lives Matter is a terrorist group. And like, yes, we do have some peaceful protests, but we also have looters. We also have rioters. We also have these protesters that are burning things down and stuff like that. I looked at this a whole lot. Do we think, yes, we do have some peaceful protests, but do we think rioting is justified? Do we think that looting is justified? Do we think that anything besides a peaceful, just a sign standing and marching peacefully is justified when in regards to everything that's going on in the world?
I think one thing that really helped me to understand and sort of shifted my viewpoint was it was a statement saying that, like, in a society that values property and money over human life, destruction of property can be a valid form of protest. Mm-hmm. And so that's sort of where I'm at.
I saw that too, Julie. I'm glad I saw that recently. So you got a head up on me, but I did see that recently.
I completely agree. Yeah, I don't understand why people are so angry over, like, oh, a store is being looted, a store is being robbed, when there are people like dying in the streets. Mm-hmm. And also I think that, like, obviously any form of protest is completely valid and is completely, like, obviously you have the right to protest, but I think white people opposed to the Black Lives Matter movement find peaceful protesting more palatable. So when it becomes more violent and more destructive, they suddenly go, oh, that's not okay. And so they push back against that. They want to keep it peaceful because, like, in their minds, that's the right form of protest.
Mm-hmm.
But even with that, I would say, there is no form of protest that is acceptable for some people, right? I mean, athletes are kneeling on the field, and that's not appropriate. Celebrities are coming out in support of Black Lives Matter. That's not acceptable. But this is not acceptable either, right? So what is the acceptable form of protest this is just another form of oppression, right? This is just another form of suppressing voices, again, in the guise of, well, you're not doing this appropriately. If you were doing it appropriately, we would listen. Yeah.
For me,
sorry.
So I'll throw in, because I kind of been directioning me in this. I don't even know that's the word, but kind of just like a point guard in this. But I'm gonna throw my shot up there for a change. For me, I'm with Olivia, I'm with Kathy and Julia when it comes to protesting. There's no, in my opinion, there's looting, rioting, peaceful protests, screaming, marching is all a release. It's a catharticism of what has been all going on. It's cathartic when we go out there and do these things, because you have to understand that we've been facing oppression for 400 plus years in this country. And for the simple fact that once again and again and again, our Black lives have been shown that they do not matter, that a building is more, it means more and is more valuable than a 16-year-old Black man or a 12-year-old Black girl or a 9-year-old Black. It doesn't matter your age. It doesn't matter your occupation. It doesn't matter your stature, your skin tone. As long as you look a little black and have some melanin in you, then you're worthy to die, and you can be killed no matter what. And so for me, when I look at protests, when I look at the anger is justified. You know, if someone has kicked you over and over and over again and brutalized you and your family for generations and generations after generations, can you blame us? And I like to go back to that phrase, can you blame us for marching? Can you blame us for torching a city that isn't ours? Because at the end of the day, we don't own it, but that's a whole nother conversation. Can you blame us for wanting to knock over statues that are in the image of our oppressors? Can you blame us for knocking down buildings and stealing things that we do not even own? That's the least of what we could possibly do to show you our frustration.
And yet at the same time, I think that I mean, I agree to an extent, but I also disagree to an extent, because I think that destruction of property, even though it's vastly sort of more insignificant than loss of life, it provides fuel, it provides fodder for a counter narrative. It's the same reason why what is framed as eco-terrorism is just a bad idea, because it gives the whole movement a bad name. So I understand the impulse to destroy property, and I'm not sort of, wound up about it, but I do think it's counterproductive. I don't think it helps. I think it provides fuel for a counter narrative. We have a constitutional right to peaceably assemble. That's the First Amendment, right? And the word peaceable is very prominent there. And we maintain that in the town square. We're not going to go and break windows at the Turkey Hill to express our anger and outrage. So I think that destruction of property is a long-standing tradition. I mean, the other irony of this is, and I'll end on this, is that one of the iconic moments that white sort of supremacists point to is the Tea Party, right? And the destruction of property of British tea, which at the time in 1775, it was seen as this act of property destruction. These are the terrorist wasn't used as the framework, but it was criminals destroying property. And now this is held up as an icon of freedom, right? That and an icon of a sort of American national identity, that we had the patriotism and the fortitude to actually sneak on and destroy this tea, that the British as a symbol of British tyranny. So there's kind of an irony in the whole issue of sort of property destruction, but I just think it's counterproductive.
Yeah. I know you have to go because it's close to 5 or already is 5. But I would ask you this: like, if someone come to you as a Black person in this country, and say that last night, let's just say let's not even put that in the air. When you look at, I'm from Baltimore, so the Freddie Gray riots happened in Baltimore. If someone came to you the day after the riots that happened in Baltimore and said, I was just so upset about all this injustice and me being Black in America, and I participated in a violent protest, would you tell them that they were wrong for that?
That they were ethically and morally wrong? No, I think that's an understandable reaction. And again, property, I think it's ethically and morally wrong to harm other human beings, but to destroy property, again, the main reason I think tactically it's a bad idea. Mm-hmm. But that's just in the kind of the field of play. It's like it gives your opponent fuel to denounce you and a way to develop a counter narrative. So, but no, I would not say you were ethically wrong to do that. I would not sort of.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that I think is extremely important is that when it comes to looting, I feel as though that yes, it gives fuel to the fire of like, oh, Black people, they're just animals anyway. So like they're doing what we expect them to do anyway. But on another hand, I feel as though that the white media will paint Black people in a horrible image no matter what. Because that's what we've been seeing historically. You don't see about this Black person graduated valedictorian from Harvard, this person graduated valedictorian from Stanford. You don't see those things in the media. You see, oh, Black on Black crime, Black people keep killing each other, they on crack, heroin, stuff like that. That's the things that's juicy for the media. But then I also think that it's this notion that Black people loot because they just want to get over it. They don't really care about this stuff because they're killing each other. And so they just want to loot just because they can get some Jordans or they can get an iPhone or they can get, something like that. But I would throw this into the mix of the situation when it comes to, oh, you shouldn't attack a building. You shouldn't push over a statue. You shouldn't burn down something. When we're doing that, you have to think about in this country, the dollar talks. So white people own the monetary, they run this country monetarily. And so in some Black people's minds, they think, okay, if you're not going to listen to me, we're going to hit you where we know that you feel it. And so we're going to hit you and destroy this building because we know that that's where your heart is, that's where your money is, that's where your mind is. Generational wealth, let's destroy that because you don't care about us. You don't care about my family tree. So let me destroy something that I know that's going to have an impact on you. What do we think about that narrative?
Khalil, I'm sorry. I need to
sorry.
go.
I had
Thank you so much, everybody.
No problem. Thank you so much, Professor.
Okay.
Can I answer the I just want to talk about the last topic. So first I want to start by saying that I get a lot of people talking about stuff like this on my TikTok feed, and whenever I see someone posting about criticism to the riots, I always try to bring up the Capitol riots, and I ask how justified were those people to go to the Capitol and storm the Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. That's the first thing. Second, I feel as though I wouldn't say violent. I wouldn't call it I don't want to say violent because I don't feel like violence is the answer. However, I do feel that I don't agree with looting. I don't agree with the burning of buildings. However, I do feel it is necessary. I do also feel that it does give fuel to the fire for white people to paint us in a bad light. However, I do still feel that it is necessary because it gets people talking. That's what we need. We need more people talking about this. We need more people talking about this. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. I know I said it twice, but it's really important to me that we have people talking about this. That's why when Khalil asked me to do this, I really wanted to do this because I just love engaging in this conversation because it makes me feel like that I'm doing my part in furthering helping my community. Another thing I wanted to bring up was Khalil said that people say you shouldn't burn buildings, you shouldn't tear down statues. Then my response to that is you shouldn't be taking our lives. You shouldn't be coming in our communities and killing our fathers, our sons, our daughters, our mothers. You shouldn't be coming in causing fear and disruption. You shouldn't be meeting protesters at the front line with guns and shields and tear gas. You want us to stop burning your buildings, stop burning our communities.
There was someone that wanted to jump in.
For me, there's kind of like two things that I wanted to say. So first and foremost, it shouldn't be up to the oppressor to decide how the oppressed protest. Because
poetry snaps on that one.
And then also too, like historically, all revolution and dramatic social change comes with messiness and violence and property destruction. So I think it's important to note that obviously that has happened in the past. You can look at, the Stonewall riots and anything similar to that, and you'll see that there has been, messiness. It's not all going to be perfect protests walking down a street and suddenly there's going to be dramatic change. I think that unfortunately it is going to take destruction of property and other things in order for people to kind of wake up and realize what's going on.
Right.
I totally agree. I feel like I feel like I understand that like violence isn't the answer, and I agree. Like I personally probably would not do anything like that, but I also agree that it's not our place to determine how other people protest. Like they have a right to be frustrated, and it's clear that when we're peaceful, nobody listens because they don't film the peaceful parts. That's not the part that the news reports. All they have to talk about is the violence or like the looting or something like that. They don't talk about the thousands of peaceful protests that go on. And if that was what got us heard, then we would have change by now. By all means, I don't think we should stop protesting peacefully. And I don't think everything should be like looting or like burning things up either. But if it makes people listen, I feel like historically, like it shows that like more things like that make a difference. Like Stonewall was a riot, and like that's what makes people heard sometimes.
I want to. I'm glad that we went down that path. I want to bring us back to Blue Lives Matter now, because that was kind of what we originally jumped into. Like, yes, this is about Blue Lives Matter versus Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. So I'm similarly to what I just did about like a mini scenario, hypothetical situation. Same thing with Blue Lives Matter. So when Blue Lives Matter, it's a couple of things I want to throw out there. One, do we think, and just me being very direct, do we think Blue Lives Matter is a racist statement? That's first. But then also, what do you think of people that says, oh, it's not a racist statement. I'm just thinking about my uncle who was a police officer, or I'm just thinking about my mother who's a police officer. What do we think of those two things? One, is it a racist statement? And then two, when people say, oh, my family, I'm just thinking about my family. It's not racist, but I'm saying like my family member, they're a good cop. They matter. Their lives matter. And for this one, I want to start with Olivia, and then we can anybody just jump in if you feel comfortable, Olivia.
Yeah, of course. So to answer the first part of the question, I think Blue Lives Matter is a racist statement because it's being used to further oppress Black people and shut down Black voices. Because yeah, I think being a police officer is a stressful and tough job, but you didn't hear Blue Lives Matter until Black Lives Matter came into being. So did you just not care about police until police were being threatened by Black people? And then further to answer your question, this is something that we've talked about in classes a lot, that people try to defend the police and say, oh, there's just a few bad apples, but the whole saying is a few bad apples spoil the bunch. And I said this in Dr. Romagnolo's class a lot, that there's a lot of systemic problems in the police industry, in the police force. And so maybe your aunt or your uncle is a good cop, but they're part of an organization that suppresses people, that oppresses people, that kills people. And there's also the whole thing about the police community that you may be a good cop, but then you're shunned by other cops for being a
Not
good
speaking
cop
out.
and not speaking, and people, and then when you speak up and when you try to speak up, then people shun you, people don't appreciate you, don't approve of you. And I think there's a reason why a lot of people don't come forward until they're ex-cops, because they don't want to risk their job, they don't want to risk that sort of police community. There's a lot of stress about police community and holding each other up. That's why in one of my classes, we were talking about the Derek Chauvin trial, and my professor said that it was such a surprise that I think 7 or 9 or something police officers testified against Derek Chauvin, and that was such a surprise because they're usually such a tight-knit community that sort of protect their own, so to say. And
Kind of
so
like a
I think,
gang.
yeah, so I think that there are good cops, there are bad cops, but if you're a good cop and it's hard to change a system from within. And I think people are like, oh, if good people become cops, then we can sort of change that. But I think that's why I'm personally the police in the police force needs to just be completely reformed from the ground up. And I mentioned this again in Dr. Romagnolo's class, because there's such a systemic problem that underlies within it that you can't just hope that good people will change it from the inside. You have to completely rebuild it, in my opinion.
Abby, you should read that out loud. You should say that out loud.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I
sorry,
was
I kind
about
of
to- I
tuned
was-
out for a second. My roommate's friend has the trial on right now, and Derek Chauvin was found guilty for all 3 charges against him.
What?
Yeah.
He should.
Yeah. And then also,
So timely.
yeah. Also too, since I did tune out, I don't know if Olivia mentioned this, but I think it's important to say that blue lives don't exist. The blue that they're referring to in that phrase is a profession, and you can't equate a profession to human lives. And then also kind of going off of that, they sign up for that job and they realize the dangers that they are signing up for when they get into that job. But being a Black person in America shouldn't come with any dangers, and they obviously didn't sign up for it. So yeah, that's just kind of my part on that.
Wow, that's like a mind bend, that what you just said. Like, we
I
had
never
these
heard
other
of it.
conversations and stuff like that, but what you said and how you said it was it bent my mind. So thank you.
I would also, when you were saying like, if somebody said, oh, I'm just thinking about, my aunt or uncle who's a good cop or whatever, honestly, I feel like my response would be to challenge them of, if they are a good cop, are they furious about, about another police officer murdering someone? Is that their response? Or if their response is to defend themselves, then I don't think they're really a good cop.
Mhm. Simply put, right?
I think it's interesting to see that there was those weekly like Back the Blue rallies in Anvil for a little bit, and then how quickly they stopped after the election, almost as if it was some form of political statement or they were making some kind of point involving the election. But I'm pretty sure they stopped like immediately after the election. So I think it just tells a lot about how when they say that, they don't really mean it. Like everybody for Black Lives Matter and stuff, like we're still protesting because nothing has changed. Meanwhile, these people, they said what they wanted to say and then they left. So if it was really an issue, then why'd
They
you stop?
had the luxury of leaving.
Exactly.
The other piece to all of this, everything that you've all said is so brilliant, but I would also say that the other piece is that when a police officer is murdered, the person who murdered them is almost invariably convicted, whereas it doesn't work the other way around, does it? I mean, that's why we're so excited about Derek Chauvin being guilty, you know what I'm saying? I think, yeah, that's all.
Definitely.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I think something that really like I thought that I was aware of things and like I thought that I was paying attention, but something that like really stood out to me and like stuck with me was after our Black Lives Matter like our vigil here on campus, hearing everybody speak and saying names of what happened and then what was done about it. And every single name, they just gave the family money as if that would bring their family back, as if that would make a difference or make it okay. But
Wait. Can you run it? You lost me for a second. Can you
Sorry.
explain it a little bit more?
So when I was listening at the vigil and each like different people came up to speak about people who were like murdered by, I think most of them, I think by police.
Yeah.
And then they said like what the situation happened and then what was done about it. And every single person named, the state or the like whoever was in charge, they just gave money to the family. And that was it. Like it stopped there. These people continued to be police officers or like were forced to retire or something, they were never held accountable. They were given, their family was given money as if that would make the situation better, as if that would make it okay. But it
Right.
doesn't change anything.
Definitely. To me, so I'm gonna throw my shot up once again. To me, when I hear Blue Lives Matter or Back to Blue, 'cause I took great offense, just personally, I took great offense to this campus when we raised the BLM flag, the black, let me just be very specific, because Blue Lives Matter is still BLM. Black Lives Matter, when we raised the Black Lives Matter flag, there was an immediate ripple reaction of saying, let's raise a Blue Lives Matter flag and back the blue protest in the Anvil, right in Anvil. To me, what Blue Lives Matter says is that you're considering the lives of those police officers. You think that their life is more relevant than the thousands, probably millions of Black lives that have been taken away. That because obviously we know about the George Floyds, we know about the Breonna Taylors, we know about the Freddie Grays and the Trayvon Martins and Mike Browns. We know about all of them. But what about all the ones we don't know about? So I'm gonna pitch it up and say millions of lives that have been lost directly from the hands of the police officers, right? And to say Blue Lives Matter is just to recant everything. It's to say that we had to, policing is a difficult job. And that police officer did what they had to do. They had to protect their lives, because that menacing Black man or Black woman sleeping on the couch, eating ice cream in the grocery store, kneeling, hands up, without a weapon, holding a brush, anything like that was a threat. And so I'm saying Blue Lives Matter because every day that you put on that uniform, you got to go ahead and you got to deal with those Black people who are going to kill you. That's, to me, what Blue Lives Matter mean. It's not indicative of, yes, we got to, support our officers. It's not patriotism. To me, it's racist. It's simply saying that Black lives do not matter. And what we should prioritize is the lives of these people wearing these blue uniforms. And that's how I view it. It's a direct, and this is something I was going to say about the All Lives Matter. And if anyone has anything to say to what I just said, great, I want to hear you. I want to shift one last time to the Asian Lives Matter. But when we talk about All Lives Matter, it seems as though that this only takes place when it's something regarding Black issues. So what I mean by that is when it comes to Black lives, or just Black people in America, Black people in the world, when anytime Black is attached to something, is automatically degraded. And so with me being the president of Black Student Union, I tell them all the time, the officers I work with, that you have to make sure that every event, every email, every flyer, every meeting that we have is to the highest degree that we can possibly make it, because we know that white people are automatically assuming that it's going to be ghetto, that it's going to be ratchet, that we're going to show up late, all these different things. So we have to make sure that we do not give them that narrative to ride on, because that's what they're automatically thinking about anything that has Black related to it. And so the same thing for Black Lives Matter. It's this effort to minimize it. It's this effort to say, okay, Black lives, they don't matter as much as white lives. They don't matter as much as, all these other intersectionalities. So we're going to minimize it. We're going to do everything we can to minimize. So we're going to say all lives matter. No, we're going to say blue lives matter. We're going to do all these different things. White lives matter, to minimize this statement. But then I also ask people to say, okay, if you don't believe me that it only happens when it comes to Black issues, think about October. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We don't go through October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month and say, what about testicular cancer? What about, somebody help me out, what's some other type of cancers? Somebody thought leukemia. They don't say, what about leukemia? We don't do that. When it's Heart Month, we don't say, Heart Month is February, right? I'm pretty sure it's Heart Month, right? Is Heart Month February?
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
Honestly.
We're gonna maybe somebody look it up real quick. Maybe if I'm wrong, please correct me. We don't say It's Heart Month, but what about Leg Month? What about Eye Month? What we don't do that with other these things. When it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we let it ride out and we donate. And we say this, we're gonna wear our pink, we're gonna wear our ribbons, we're gonna wear our pins, and we're gonna support the hell out of breast cancer because it's an issue. But when it's Black Lives, when it's anything that has to do with Black, BET, Black Entertainment Television, why we don't got a white entertainment television? HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. That's racist. Why they need a college just for Black lives? Like, why didn't just need a college for Black people? Anything, Black History Month. What about White History Month? Why we don't have that? It's always this, I'm gonna go back to the word threatening. The Black existence in this country and in this world is threatening. And so to a lot of white people, and not all, and I'm very blessed that we're accompanied with great allies who are white on this call, but to a lot of white people, it's a threat. The Black existence is a threat, so they have to do every single thing in their power to minimize it and to keep us oppressed.
Khalil, kind of going off of that, I think it was in the fall at some point, there was maybe like a 10-year-old boy who was white and he was killed by a police officer and he had like autism. And I saw this Black guy post on Twitter and he said, I don't see anyone from All Lives Matter posting about you, so Black Lives Matter got you, my dude, type of thing. And like, you're right, like when it is other issues, they don't care. It's only in retaliation to anything relating to Black people or Black people's issues.
Right.
I've even seen people like with a similar situation. I don't think it was the same kid, but like people post about like, I think it was, I don't remember, it was a while ago, but like a white child who had been killed for whatever reason. And people were like, why aren't you upset about this? I don't see anybody posting about it. And I'm like, yeah, you do. Like, this is literally a whole thread of posts about it. Like, and they were using it as like a way to attack like other movements, as a way to say like, oh, you guys care about people, well, why don't you care about this? But nobody was ever saying they didn't care about that. That's obviously horrible, and I'm sure literally anyone would agree.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in that situation, if you literally Googled it, the person who killed that kid was convicted and, sent to prison. So it's just entirely used as a pawn to put down Black Lives Matter, obviously.
To sort of jump off everyone's points about that, I wanted to bring this up with All Lives Matter, but I think like All Lives Matter is kind of inherently hypocritical, just for like the reasons that everyone has stated. Like, you don't see it, like, where are the All Lives Matter people with like disabled rights, or for like gay rights, or or like neurodivergent rights? You don't see people coming out with All Lives Matter for that. It's specifically used to further oppress Black people and silence their voices.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I want to, because of time restraints, I almost had you for a whole hour and a half. So
yeah, I was just about to say, I've actually got to go soon. I've actually missed a lot of esports practice today.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. I really don't mind.
And I want to throw this out there for us because it's really, really relevant. So Asian lives matter now. So what do we think about that? And so to help us out, I'm going to throw in another type of thread of conversation or a thread of thought, consciousness that I received. That, do we think Asian lives matter should exist? One. Two, do we think if it should it exist by itself? Just Asian lives matter, period. Or I've also seen people say, oh, what about if we say like Black Lives Matter and Asian Lives Matter? What do we think about all of those things?
Just real quick, I definitely don't agree with lumping them together, because I think just in general that would take away from the importance of both movements. Mm-hmm. So just like first and foremost, I don't think that would be a good idea. But
I don't agree with the saying Asian Lives Matter, because I think it does take away some of the impact from Black Lives Matter. I much prefer the saying like stop Asian hate. This is me personally, but I feel like when you say like Asian Lives Matter, that brings up like I think that sort of takes away a little bit of the impact of the saying Black Lives Matter. Obviously, Asian lives do matter just as Black lives do matter, but I think we should use a different saying, one that doesn't already take from one that exists. And I agree that if we do lump them together, that takes away from both movements. I think Asian people and Black people should help lift each other up because we're both minorities that are being oppressed by white people. And obviously we should support each other, but I don't think lumping our movements together is going to help either of us.
Can I just can I say this last
Go.
thing and then head out.
Mhm.
I agree with you, Olivia. I do think that that the movement should be separate, and I do agree with you that that Black and Asian people Asian Americans should work together to help solve each other's problems. I feel like that's really what at the core of all of these movements is equality. That's how we gain equality. We help build each other's communities up. I really like that idea a lot. I hadn't thought of that myself, because for so long it felt like the fight with Black Lives Matter against the system was our burden to bear alone, our being Black people. And slowly I'm learning that it really doesn't have to be, just like all things in life. So that was so I agree with you on that. Another thing, I also agree with and saying stop Asian hate. I feel like giving the movement its own hashtag not only gives it its own power, but like we said before, it doesn't take power away from any other movements. I feel like it needs its own power. It needs more of its own power. I feel like it needs a lot more people supporting it, because I don't see a lot of people supporting the Stop Asian Hate movement. And yes, that's where I stand.
Thank you so much.
Can I say a couple of things, Khalil, before, because I have to go. I have to, sorry.
Absolutely.
The first thing I wanted to say is that I think that people are unaware or ignorant about the history of oppression of Asian Americans in the United States, in a way that I think more people understand the history of Black oppression, whether they want to deny it or not. I think there is a lot of there has been a lot of awareness raised over the last several years to that. But I really think that there is very little understood about, especially because of the model minority stereotype, which I can't actually go into because I don't have enough time. But because of the model minority stereotype, I think a lot of people really just don't simply understand the oppression that comes with being Asian in America or being Asian American. And I think that's, the last thing I wanted to say is that there is such power in cross-cultural alliances. If all oppressed people bound together to fight that oppression, there is so much power in that. But I think that often we allow the oppressor to divide us, right? To make it seem as if there's a pie and there is a limited number of pieces to that pie. And so if you take too many pieces of that pie, then I don't get any, right? But it's not. Power is not a pie. We can get together and fight oppression together and help one another's movements. That was more inarticulate than I wanted it to be. I don't know if that made sense.
It made sense to me. And before you go, do you mind, I don't know if you have time to quickly just let us know, like, what did you get from this conversation?
So what did I get from this conversation? So one really big thing I got was from Olivia and the comment that she made about Stop Asian Hate versus Asian Lives Matter. And honestly, I hadn't really thought about the implications of using the same hashtag versus using a different hashtag. But but I have to think about it a little bit more, Olivia, but I think I agree with you. The other thing, I mean, this is a really simple thing, but just how intelligent and smart and thoughtful all of you are. I mean, I already knew that, but I'm just so impressed with the depth of your thinking, and you know, I learn a lot from you all. So that's it.
Well, thank you so much for participating, and I greatly appreciate you being part of this conversation with us, and pushing yourself and also pushing us. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. I'll see you all
No,
soon.
no
Bye.
problem. For the sake of time constraint, do anyone want to just let us know what did they get from this conversation? And I know Olivia's comment kind of left us all hanging out there like of epiphany type thing. So in your conclusion, if you want to tack on a little bit to what Olivia said or anyone else, let us know, but then also let us know what did you take away, if anything, from this conversation. So anyone can just jump out there.
Can I go?
Yeah.
I think that the most important thing that I took from this is some more people to talk to. I look forward to seeing you all around campus if any of you are on campus. Um, if you ever want to see me, I'm usually in the esports room or in my room. I'm in Funk East 218. Um, Definitely, if you find your way in there, stop by and say hi. And if you see me on campus, say hi. I definitely love to continue the conversation with everyone. And yeah, that's about it.
Well, thank you so much, Raven. It sounds like you're on the move, on the go. So if you had to leave us, please feel free to do so. All right, anyone else?
I just want to add a couple of points back to the whole need for a separate Black Lives Matter. And the one word that I would emphasize in that scope is, or not one word, one term, it's the systemic racism. It's that the oppression of Black people in America historically has been built into the whole system. The country was founded based on principles of racism. And further information along that line is a book that I'm currently reading and I highly recommend, and it's called Caste, C-A-S-T-E, by Isabel Wilkerson. And she does an excellent job of giving the historic background of racism and caste and tracing it through systems in India, and the fact that the Nazi, the whole Hitler regime and all of that, they based it on the model that they used was the model of America. What was going on, what had been established in America formed the core for the Nazi situation. So when people say that's not who we are, wrong, that is who we are and who we have been. So I'll leave it at that. But
yeah, I love that you said it, because you know it's this whole language of like, I'm sorry if we have any. I don't like to get too political, but I'm sorry if there's some Joe Biden like fanboys or girls or anything in the audience. But when Joe Biden said like, oh, this is not what America is, you know, we're not racist, you know, and I'm like, that's BS. I'm like, America has always been racist, always been sexist, always been homophobic. Like come on now, like who are we kidding at? But thank you for sharing that, Adrian. And I'll offer this. Well, if you can stay, I would love for you to stay and hear the reflections of everyone else. But if you do have to go, please feel free to leave us. Anyone else want to jump in and let us know their takeaways?
I think, well, I gained a lot from this conversation, and I hope everyone does, honestly, because these are uncomfortable conversations that we need to have, and it's always great to hear other people's perspectives, even if we don't always agree with those perspectives. But I don't think like any of us really disagreed with each other that much in this particular conversation. But it's always valuable. It's always valuable to get other people's perspectives, and in ways that, and there are some things that may seem obvious to one of us that isn't obvious to another. So these kinds of things help us to point out the holes of our own thinking and sort of fill those holes and give us a newer perspective on things that we may think we already know about, but we clearly don't, because there's always new things we can learn. There's always new ways we can contribute to these kinds of conversations. There's always new ways we can contribute to these movements.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just to pick up on what you said, this one wasn't as contentious as I know other ones will be, because I have some work ahead of me in these next two sessions. So yes, this one wasn't as volatile as it could have been. And I thank all of y'all for being open with that. So it looks as though that we have between Katie and Julia. So I don't know if y'all want to like spar over it, but
I don't know that I can add much more than what has already been said. I appreciate, hearing everyone's words and perspectives. And like we said, it was for me more of like less of like a disagreement and, different opinions, as much as it was just better understanding and building upon knowledge, which is always lovely and important and productive. And so, thanks for having me.
And it shows it's kind of more like a consolidation. I'm guessing that's what you're getting at, Julia. And it's good to have conversations such as these, because it's like we now, if we didn't know before, it's like now we know, okay, we got some allies in the room, we got some allies. So thank you for that. And Katie, are you the last one?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, take it away.
So I was just really glad to have this opportunity, I guess, to talk to everybody about this. And I think it was really important. And like, I feel like you always think like, oh, like, I'm pretty educated on this. Like, I know things, but like, even when you like agree with other people on the topic, there's always still more to like share and learn. Like, so while I feel like we did luckily agree on a lot of things, I still think that I learned a lot, and I heard a lot of new perspectives on some things that I might not have like thought about before, or I might have like seen but like not quite known like where I fall on it. And I think it was really beneficial, and I really liked having this opportunity to talk to everyone.
Well, thank you so much, Katie. And I was going to say that you're always the last one, but I guess I'm always the last one, because I'm a share mines with you. And I think with me, a lot of the things that a lot of y'all said, I would even hazard to say that everything that everyone has said allowed me to think differently about a lot of different things. And a lot of the things that you all said, not alter my perspective, but gave me more insight. And I think that's what you were saying, Katie, that it just gave you a little bit more insight about, what the hell is happening? What is going on in this world? And how can we become better allies? How can we become better? Her name is slipping my mind at this moment, but she's a Black lady who performs on the Grammys with Lil Baby. And she said that in this time, we do not need, I think it's like Tamia. I'm gonna look it up for you all, because I hope these don't go viral and she see this. And she realized I forgot her name. But I remember her quote. And she said, in these times, like, we do not need allies. We need accomplices. And that slight change of word to me shows that accomplices is someone that's going to really ride for you, and really, do the battle. And so for these conversations, I thank all of y'all for signing up, for participating as eloquently and as openly and as compassionately as you have done over this hour and 30 minutes. As I said at the top of the hour, this has been recorded. And so our plan is to put it up on YouTube, the Office of Intercultural Affairs YouTube channel. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put it up on there, hopefully, so that you can review it, you can push it out, you can share it to anyone that you think may benefit from all the wonderful things that you all have said. So that's pretty much all I have. And thank you again.
Thanks, Khalil.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having this and inviting me.
No problem. See you.
Thank you,
safe,
Khalil.
No problem.